After marrying Ethan Grant, the illegitimate son of the richest man in the elite circle, he loved me like I was his whole world. Everyone said I had married for love. But when I was drowning, he just watched coldly from the side. "Stop pretending to be pitiful," he said. "I gave you over 20 years of a wealthy life as Mrs. Grant. That should be enough. The only person I truly owe is your cousin Claire. She's the one I really love. She stayed silently by my side for 10 years, just so I wouldn't be in a difficult position." Then he added cruelly, "You'd better really be drowning this time. It would be perfect for us." Even our son, who had just started college, joined in, trying to persuade him. "Don't worry about her, Dad. Aunt Claire's the one who really cares about us. She's been managing the company all these years. You should marry her." Mom would have given her blessing too. I was so furious I couldn't catch my breath. I died from suffocation. I had worked tirelessly for that family for over 20 years, and in the end, they were ready to throw me to the fish. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day Ethan came to our home to propose. The look he gave me was full of disgust. Before my father could speak, Ethan stepped forward and said, "Mr. Stone, the one I love is Claire. Please let me marry her." In that moment, I understood Ethan had been reborn too. My dad was trembling, pointing at Ethan with a shaking finger, too angry to speak. But Ethan's eyes were glued to Claire, who stood just behind me. That gaze, I'd seen it before. In my last life, when I invited Claire to our house, Ethan had looked at her the same way, obsessed, crazed, and unhinged. "Mr. Stone, I made the wrong choice before. Claire is my true soulmate." He turned his head, finally casting a disdainful glance at me. "Emily is just too boring, dull and flavorless. I want to create a real business legend with Claire by my side. Besides, Claire's been living in your house anyway. She's practically like your daughter." My dad's chest rose and fell rapidly in fury. He reached for the phone to call security, but I stopped him. "Wait," I said. My father looked at me, stunned. Ethan froze too, then curved his lips into a mocking smile. He must have thought I would beg him again, like I did in the last life. He stepped closer and offered a condescending solution. "Emily, even though we can't get married, I can hire you as my personal assistant. Name your salary, anything you want. After all, you've been with me for so many years." The air turned dead silent. My father's face went from red to a dark, livid shade. But I smiled. I gently moved his hand away from the phone and walked step by step toward Ethan. I stopped in front of the face I had once loved for over 20 years, looked him straight in the eye and said calmly, "A bastard child who had to climb his way up through marriage? I never respected that before." I paused, the curve of my lips deepening into a smirk. Now, I despise it even more. I saw Ethan's face freeze in shock. Then I turned to my father and said, "Dad, I don't want to dirty my eyes here any longer. I'm going upstairs to change." But I didn't go to my own room. I walked straight to Claire's. I had to remind her, Ethan Grant is not a good man. The door was half closed. Claire had her back to the doorway, speaking in a hushed voice on the phone with her best friend, her tone full of smug pride and excitement. "I got Ethan, that idiot. He said right in front of everyone that he wants to marry me. Emily, she's just a pretty but clueless doll. What does she know about business? About men?" I just copied her outfits, mimicked the way she talks, and grabbed a few of her drafts from her computer. I tweaked them a bit, and Ethan now thinks I'm some kind of genius soulmate, a business prodigy. He has no idea that every word he praises me for actually belongs to that dumb Emily. Ha ha ha, just wait, once I marry into the Grant family. The first thing Claire did was hand over the Stone family's company to my parents. I froze where I stood. So that's how it was. My ideas had been stolen by a thief, and everything my family had worked so hard for had become a cruel joke to an ungrateful traitor. While I was still in shock, Ethan Grant suddenly grabbed my wrist tightly. I hadn't even noticed when he'd followed me. His face was twisted with rage and disgust. "Emily, I'm warning you, don't even think about hurting Claire." He was convinced I had come to cause trouble for her. His eyes were full of contempt and disdain as he sneered, "Drop that jealousy. Claire's talent is beyond anything you could ever comprehend. 3 days from now, at the Genesis Capital Venture Summit, she'll amaze everyone. You'd better accept reality and stop humiliating yourself." Ethan was convinced that his second chance at life existed solely to correct his mistakes and embrace true love. He truly believed his success in the last life had all come from Claire, the mastermind behind it all. As I stared at his arrogant and idiotic face, rage boiled inside me, but I forced a smile, one that made him hesitate for a moment. "Sure," I said calmly. "I'm looking forward to it." I wanted him to watch everything he believed in, everything he placed his hopes on, shatter right before his eyes. 3 days later, I walked into the Genesis Capital Venture Summit and instantly became the center of attention. Not because of who I was, but because I was the pitiful woman whose cousin had stolen her fiancé. She has the nerve to show up? What thick skin! If it were me, I'd have dug a hole and hidden in it. Claire is a once-in-a-century business prodigy. Ethan Grant isn't stupid. Of course he chose her. People whispered, some with sympathy, others eager for drama. I ignored them all, watching coldly as Ethan and Claire basked in the flattery of the crowd. Then they noticed me and walked over, step by step. Ethan spoke first, smug and condescending. "Emily, do you see now? This is the world that belongs to me and Claire. All you're good for is looking up at us from the audience." I smiled. "Mr. Grant, have you ever heard of the term killing with praise?" His smile faded. Still playing tough, he scoffed. His eyes went cold as he pointed to the hem of Claire's dress and barked an order. "Go fix her gown. Do that, and I'll consider you truly here to offer your blessings. When the summit's over and I'm in a good mood, maybe I'll let you join the company as a team leader." It was pure charity. Claire tugged gently at his arm, a troubled look on her face. "Ethan, don't be like that. Emily is still our elder after all. I don't deserve such respect." Her words said one thing, but her body leaned forward ever so slightly, practically radiating anticipation at the thought of me serving her. Watching their coordinated performance made my stomach churn. Just then, the stage lights came on. The vice president of Genesis Capital, acting as the summit host, walked on stage and greeted the crowd. "Good evening, everyone. Tonight, our special guest investor, the mysterious Mr. K, has expressed great appreciation for Miss Claire Stone's project, the Codex. Now, please welcome Miss Claire to the stage for a one-on-one investor pitch." The entire room erupted in excitement. Flashbulbs exploded as every camera turned to Claire. Her smile was flawless. Ethan lifted his chin, beaming with pride and self-satisfaction. He was Claire's biggest backer, the one who had put her on this stage. He leaned toward me, and in a voice low enough that only the three of us could hear, whispered, "Now do you see? Claire's talent is my greatest trump card." Then he tossed a document at me. The corner of the paper scraped across the back of my hand, leaving a stinging red mark. I looked down. It was a statement, one supposedly written by me, declaring that I voluntarily withdrew from the engagement, admitted I was inferior in talent, and wished them happiness. "Don't force me to be ruthless," he said, staring at me like I was an ant he could squash at will. The host on stage cleared his throat, and his voice once again rang out across the venue. "In addition, Mr. K has one more request." The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the stage. "Mr. K would like Miss Emily Stone to join the pitch on stage as well." Ethan's smile froze. The light in Claire's eyes dimmed instantly. The host paused for a moment, then continued. "We've discovered that the project submitted by Miss Emily Stone, Solaris, shares an identical core framework with Miss Claire Stone's project, the Codex." All eyes turned sharply to me. Ethan Grant whipped his head around to look at me, the fury just before eruption flashing in his eyes. Claire had already begun trembling uncontrollably. All the color had drained from her face. In the suffocating silence of the room, I calmly straightened my collar and walked past Ethan and Claire without a glance. I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight immediately finding me. Behind me, the giant screen displayed two project proposals side by side. The Codex on the left, Solaris on the right. The structure was exactly the same, the financial forecasts were identical. Claire was the first to react. Her eyes filled with tears, and her voice trembled as she said, "Emily, I know you've never liked me, but why would you steal the work I poured my heart into?" In one short sentence, she painted me as a jealous, despicable fraud. Ethan pulled her tightly into his arms and pointed at me, shouting to everyone in the room, "She stole it. I saw her with my own eyes, 3 days ago, sneaking into Claire's room like a thief. She must have taken the files then. He glared at me, his eyes burning with hatred. Emily, I know you too well. All you ever had were cheap tricks. You don't understand the first thing about real business strategy. You're not even qualified to be Claire's assistant. My father, sitting below the stage, was trembling with rage and looked like he was about to charge up. I raised my hand subtly to stop him, then turned toward the host and spoke calmly. Words alone prove nothing. Since Mr. K is also following this summit, why don't we let him give us a live question, a pressure test? Then we'll see clearly who the real creator is and who's the thief. Without hesitation, Ethan answered on Claire's behalf. Fine, let's settle this so you'll admit defeat once and for all. He was utterly convinced Claire would win, convinced that, in this second life, his judgment couldn't be wrong. He wanted to turn this public execution into a shining testament for his so-called true love. The large screen behind us lit up with a video connection. Mr. K appeared on screen, wearing a silver mask that revealed only his eyes. He presented a cutting-edge, forward-thinking question. Claire turned ghostly pale. The question was well beyond the scope of anything she had memorized. She opened her mouth, lips moving, trying to come up with a response, but her answer was a chaotic mess of broken logic and meaningless fragments. In the end, all she could muster was an empty conclusion. It's a bold concept, but it needs time to be validated. Ethan immediately stepped in to smooth things over. He shot me a smug look and said mockingly, Claire's just nervous. But you, Emily, you're too scared to say a word. You've already lost. Then, turning to the screen, he put on the act of a devoted protector. Mr. K, Claire is just a pure, innocent girl. Please don't make things harder for her. She never wanted her work to be plagiarized. I apologize on her behalf. As long as you're still willing to invest, I promise to make Emily disappear for good. He wanted to trade my erasure for Claire's future. The whispers below the stage turned into open ridicule. So this was her plan? Force her way onto the stage? Shameless. Even Mr. Grant wants her gone. Why is she still here? I smiled, stepped forward, and picked up a marker beside the whiteboard. The tip of the pen made a crisp, deliberate sound as it met the surface. Then I began to break down Mr. K's question across 3 dimensions: core logic, technical baseline, and real-world application. Layer by layer, I dissected the challenge and proposed 3 concrete optimization solutions. When I finished, I put the marker down and turned to face the audience. I pointed to the 2 identical proposals still glowing behind me. One more thing I need to highlight, I said. To fool amateur investors like Mr. Grant, who pretend to understand business but don't, I intentionally planted 3 data traps in my proposal. I then identified each trap, explained its purpose and mechanism, and revealed exactly which financial reporting cycle each one was designed to detonate in. A true thief, I said clearly, would never see any of that. The room fell into dead silence. Ethan's face went from flushed red to a dark, humiliated shade of blue. Claire swayed on her feet, barely able to stand. Claire nearly collapsed to the ground. Mr. K remained silent for a long time before slowly speaking. Mr. Ethan Grant, do you still believe Miss Emily Stone is the plagiarist? Ethan's face turned a shade of ashen gray I had never seen before. It was like he'd been stripped bare in front of a crowd. Every ounce of dignity and confidence shattered into dust. His body trembled with fear and confusion. No, that's impossible, he muttered, turning toward the pale, speechless Claire in his arms. Claire, tell him. Tell everyone it's not true. It was you. You taught me all of this. Say it. Claire's lips trembled, but not a single word came out. All her pretense, all her performance, laughable in the face of real strength. Then Mr. K's voice came through the screen again. Miss Claire Stone, your submission of the codex was received 3 days ago at 9:15 a.m., but our system shows that Miss Emily Stone submitted Solaris 3 weeks ago at 3:02 p.m. 3 weeks. That was more than enough time for someone with intent to make a perfect copy of an original project. The crowd erupted in shock. Every whisper, every mocking glance suddenly turned and swept toward Ethan and Claire. Ethan shoved Claire away from him like she was something filthy. She let out a sharp scream as she fell to the ground, completely disheveled. He didn't even look at her. He stormed over to me, eyes bloodshot, clutching my shoulders in a death grip. You planned this, he hissed. You planned it all. You knew from the start you wanted to watch me fall. Emily, you're so cruel. I looked at his face, twisted with desperation and rage. Ethan, I said calmly, I wasn't watching you fall, I was just taking back what was mine. At that moment, Mr. K removed the silver mask from his face. A gentle, refined man with a pale, sickly complexion appeared on the giant screen. The entire venue went silent once more. Even my father, seated below the stage, stood up in stunned disbelief, his mouth slightly open, eyes wide in shock. Ethan was hit like thunder had struck him. He froze completely, and the strength in his hands fell away. His Adam's apple bobbed as he forced out the words, Luke Rivers? No, he should have said, the true power behind Genesis Capital, my uncle, Luke Rivers. Due to health reasons, my uncle had spent years receiving treatment overseas, rarely appearing in public. In my last life, after he passed away, I had sorted through his belongings and discovered that he had always been quietly supporting me from afar. Even without my knowledge, he had helped me clear away countless obstacles. Now, his eyes settled on me, filled with unspoken pain and deep regret. Emily, he said softly, I'm sorry. Your uncle came back too late. The moment he spoke, the crowd erupted again. Then, addressing everyone in the room, he made an announcement. From today onward, Genesis Capital will invest fully in Miss Emily Stone's Solaris project. Ethan staggered slightly, but that wasn't the end. Luke continued, and I will transfer 30% of my personal shares in Genesis Capital, unconditionally, to my niece, Emily. As his final words landed, the entire hall fell into an eerie, stunned silence. The light in Ethan's eyes slowly faded until only ashes remained. It was then that he finally realized he had been given a second chance at life. And not only had he failed to right his wrongs, he had personally dragged himself into irreversible ruin. Murmurs filled the hall again. People looked at Ethan with a mixture of pity and scorn. What an idiot. He backed a fraud and ended up offending the real power. She's the actual heiress, his own fiancée. He gave everything up, for nothing. After the summit, Ethan and Claire became the biggest joke in the entire elite circle. I sat quietly in my uncle's car, watching the neon lights flash outside the window. My father sat in the front passenger seat, glancing back at me from time to time, his eyes full of guilt and remorse. Emily, my uncle said as he handed me a document. It was the official transfer agreement for 30% of Genesis Capital's shares. I accepted it without a word. My fingers trembled slightly as I held the document. This is what you deserve, Uncle Luke said, his pale face tinged with emotion. Back when your grandfather founded Genesis Capital, your mother was the one he saw as his true successor. If it hadn't been for... He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. In my previous life, I was so consumed by my love and devotion to Ethan Grant that I ignored everything about my grandfather's legacy. I turned a blind eye to the family's business. Not until Uncle Luke passed away and Genesis collapsed did I realize how wrong I'd been. But by then, it was far too late for regret. Thank you, Uncle, I said sincerely as I accepted the document. From now on, I'll be the one to protect what you and Grandpa built. He looked momentarily stunned, then smiled with deep relief. The car stopped in front of the Stone family villa, but my heart grew heavy. Inside, my aunt and uncle were already waiting on the couch. The moment we stepped through the door, they leapt to their feet. Big brother, my aunt wailed, tears and snot streaming down her face. You have to stand up for our Claire. She was framed by Emily. Our Claire is so pure, there's no way she would ever plagiarize anything. My uncle quickly added his voice to hers. It was Emily. That girl's been cunning since she was little. She must have been jealous of Claire and Mr. Grant's love. That's why she set up this whole trap. My father trembled with rage, pointing at the two of them. You actually have the nerve to come here and say this? After what Claire did? Instead of repenting, you dare twist the truth like this? I thought my aunt might finally back down, but to my surprise, she turned her fury on me. Emily, don't think you're untouchable, just because your uncle supports you now. Don't forget why Ethan Grant liked you in the first place. If it weren't for Claire constantly praising you in front of him, copying how you dressed and spoke just to get his attention, do you really think he would have looked at you twice? You're nothing but a cold wooden doll. So that was the truth. My so-called 20-year love in my previous life was nothing but a carefully crafted illusion built by their manipulation. I smiled coldly. So you admit it, I said, stepping closer, my eyes like ice. You admit Claire has been copying my life from the beginning. My aunt flinched, backing up a step under my gaze, but she still refused to concede. Copying? That's called helping. If it weren't for Claire, with your personality, you'd never have gotten married. Enough, my father roared, slamming a stack of documents onto the coffee table. This is the termination of ties agreement I just had our lawyer draft. From this moment on, your family has nothing to do with the Stones. Get out, now. My aunt and uncle were stunned. They hadn't expected my father to cut ties so decisively. Big brother, you can't do this, my aunt cried, lunging toward him, but he shoved her away. Security, he barked. 2 guards entered immediately, dragging my aunt and uncle toward the door. You can't treat us like this, my aunt shrieked. Emily, you bitch, you destroyed my daughter's future. I watched her being dragged out with cold eyes. There was no satisfaction in me, only a deep, frozen calm. Claire was still upstairs. I spoke evenly. Claire, you can come down now. She stood at the top of the stairs, her face pale as ash. She hadn't dared show herself the entire time. Now discovered, she had no choice but to walk down, trembling with each step. She stopped in front of me, eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Looking at her, disgust rose in my chest. In my previous life, this was exactly how she ruined me, step by step. She took everything from me, my husband, my child, my identity. I waved my hand and the security guards escorted her out as well. Finally, the villa fell silent. But Ethan Grant didn't disappear so easily. Like a trapped beast, he began to spiral, more obsessed, more deranged, and more dangerous than ever. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of our company, gazing at the towering advertisement for Blaze Ventures on the building across the street. A faint smile tugged at the corners of my lips. Liam took over Ethan Grant's project, Uncle Luke said as he handed me a cup of coffee. Yes, I replied. A sworn enemy turned ally. How ironic. I took a sip. The bitterness spread across my tongue. Liam Chen had once been a business rival, crushed under Ethan's heel. Now, he had become Ethan's last lifeline. In desperation to secure investment, Ethan had signed a suicidal bet-on agreement, reach 1 million users in 3 months, or Blaze Ventures would gain full control of his shares. Has he lost his mind? My father asked in shock after reading the agreement. I shook my head. He's not crazy, just too confident. Confident to the point of blindness. Confident to the point of stupidity. The next day, Ethan publicly announced the launch of his new social media platform, Skynet. He claimed it would disrupt the entire industry. At the press conference, he stood tall, radiating pride, his eyes openly challenging me. This project, my father said, frowning, looks strangely familiar. I let out a cold laugh, because it's the draft I once tossed into the trash. That concept had 3 fatal flaws. I had abandoned it long ago. But somehow Claire had dug it up and presented it to Ethan like a treasure. Should we stop him? Uncle Luke asked. No, I said, shaking my head. Let him carry on. I pulled out a document. This is Skynet's data model. Once the user count surpasses 500,000, the system will crash. And I paused for a moment. I left a backdoor in the architecture when I first designed it. All user data will auto-sync to my server. My father and Uncle Luke exchanged stunned glances. Emily, my father said slowly, to deal with wolves, you have to be even more ruthless than they are. I nodded calmly. In the following days, I threw myself entirely into the Solaris project, while keeping close watch on Skynet's trajectory. Ethan burned through money like water. Ads flooded every major platform. User numbers soared. Day 3, 400,000 users. Day 5, 450,000. Day 7, 480,000. My team worked around the clock preparing for the harvest. On the night of Day 8, Ethan held a lavish celebration banquet at a 5-star hotel. The event was filled with celebrities and business elites. He stood on stage, champagne in hand, beaming as he addressed the crowd. Thank you all for your support, he said. Tonight, I want to thank someone very special. The crowd stirred. Every eye turned toward me. I had dragged my father along to attend. He now sat quietly in a back corner, arms crossed. Without her, Ethan continued, lifting his glass, I wouldn't have found my true self. His eyes gleamed with triumph. Emily, Do you see? I soar even higher without you. Applause thundered through the room. Claire clung to his arm. Though visibly worn down, her eyes shone with pride. I raised my own glass with a calm smile, silently counting down in my heart. 3, 2, 1. The number on the large digital screen behind Ethan changed. 499,998, 499,999, 500,000. At the exact moment the counter ticked to 500,000, a notification sound rang out. Every phone in the room buzzed in unison. Skynet crashed. The app instantly blacked out and force closed across every device. No one could log in. Then the screen behind Ethan abruptly switched to the logo of Solaris Technologies. A message popped up. Skynet has collapsed. Solaris is now officially live. All Skynet users can migrate with one click. Your data is fully preserved. The room erupted in chaos. Ethan slammed his champagne glass to the floor. Shards flew in all directions. "Emily," he roared, charging at me, only to be blocked by security. "What did you do?" I stood up, calmly walked to the center of the stage and took the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, voice clear and unwavering. "I'm Emily Stone, CEO of Solaris Technologies. I'd like to thank Mr. Grant for providing such an effective early-stage marketing campaign for our new platform." Silence fell over the room like a blanket. "Just now," I continued with a smile, sweeping my gaze across the audience before landing squarely on Ethan's twisted expression, "Mr. Grant said that without me, he would soar even higher." I tilted my head slightly, still smiling. But he forgot one thing. A person without wings will never fly. The collapse of the Skynet project triggered a chain reaction. Liam Chen at Blaze Ventures immediately activated the bet-on clause, demanding Ethan Grant repay 3 times the investment amount. Otherwise, Blaze would forcibly acquire his company. The once celebrated rising star Ethan Grant was now neck-deep in financial crisis. Blaze Ventures officially announced they would pursue legal action against Ethan. Multiple properties under his name were frozen. I sat in my office, watching financial news notifications flash rapidly across my phone screen. A faint smile played on my lips. "Miss Stone," my assistant said hesitantly at the door. "Ethan Grant is here again. It was his 7th visit. Tell him I'm not available," I said calmly, flipping another page of the report in front of me. To me now, the man I had once been obsessed with for over 20 years was no more than a stranger passing by. Suddenly, a commotion erupted outside the window. Ethan stood in front of the building, disheveled and red-eyed. "Emily, I know you're in there. Come out here." Security tried to restrain him, but he fought back like a madman. "You can't do this to me. We're husband and wife, 20 years of marriage, 20 years." I watched indifferently, my heart calm as still water. In my previous life, I gave him everything I had, only to be repaid with betrayal and coldness. This life, I wouldn't give him even a single piece of myself. "Escort him out," I said into the intercom, voice steady. Security grabbed him by both arms. Still unwilling to give up, he shouted, "Emily, what do you want from me? Just meet me once." I walked to the window and looked down at him being dragged away. My gaze was steady, without a hint of emotion. When he realized I wouldn't come out, he sent a message. "After everything we've been through, are you really this heartless? Please, I'm begging you, help me one last time. If you get me through this, I'll agree to anything you want." I blocked his number without a second thought. Once, I thought he was my whole world. Now he wasn't even worthy of a glance. "Miss Stone?" my assistant said again, knocking gently. "Chairman Gordon Grant of Story Group would like to meet with you." I smiled. The fish had finally taken the bait. Gordon chose to meet at an exclusive private tea house not open to the public. He sat in the seat of honor and personally brewed tea for me. "Emily," he said, cutting to the chase, "I won't sugarcoat it. I know that idiot Ethan wronged you, and I know everything you've done lately has been aimed at him." I sipped my tea calmly, waiting for him to continue. "I'll give you the chance to destroy him," Gordon said in a lowered voice. "I'll help you take down his company. Make him lose everything and be kicked out of the Grant family. In return, you'll merge your platform with Story Group." He thought I was a woman blinded by hatred, one who would gladly marry into the Grant family just to get back at Ethan. "Chairman Grant," I said, looking up and meeting his eyes, "you seem to be mistaken about one thing. I'm not here to destroy him. I'm here to devour him, not just his company, but Story Group as well." Gordon's hand trembled, nearly spilling the tea in his cup. His pupils constricted, and his face turned ghostly pale. "What did you say?" I slid a file folder across the table toward him. Inside were detailed records, 3 years of financial irregularities within Story Group, backdoor dealings among the executives, and evidence of illicit operations between him and several board members. "Chairman Grant," I said quietly, "you're getting older. Maybe it's time you retired and enjoyed your remaining years." Gordon's face went from pale to red, finally swelling into an ugly, bruised shade of purple. He slammed his hand on the table, sending tea splashing everywhere, some of it onto my white blouse. I didn't bother wiping it off. I let the drops spread across the fabric. "You dare threaten me?" "This isn't a threat," I said, leaning forward slightly. "It's a negotiation. You have 2 choices. First, call a board meeting and voluntarily step down. Transfer all your shares to me. In return, everything in this folder stays locked away in a vault, and your family keeps the last shred of dignity it has." I paused for a moment, my voice turning even colder. "Second, I go public with all of this, and Story Group, your leaky, battered ship, sinks straight to the bottom of the ocean. Do you really think all the shareholders and rivals you've offended over the years will let you and your precious son, Gavin Grant, off the hook?" Gordon Grant stared at me, veins pulsing at his temple. He had never imagined that the once docile, seemingly harmless girl who sat at the edge of family meetings could have investigated Story Group so thoroughly. He didn't know that in my past life, in order to help Ethan Grant gain a foothold in the Grant family, I had studied Story Group inside and out, every department, every ledger, every executive. I knew their weaknesses, their dirty accounts, and their vulnerabilities like the back of my hand. What I had once gathered as weapons for Ethan, now I was turning against him. After a long silence, Gordon slumped back in his chair, voice hoarse. "I need time to think." "I'll give you 24 hours, I said. "I expect your answer by 10 a.m. tomorrow." As I stepped out of the tea house, the sunlight was so sharp it made me squint. Uncle Luke was waiting by the car. He rolled down the window and handed me a bottle of water, concern in his eyes. "Emily," he said, "Gordon Grant's an old fox. Isn't pushing him this hard too risky?" I unscrewed the cap and took a sip, then shook my head. "Uncle, people like him. You can't give them even a second to regroup. What he fears most isn't losing the company, it's that his carefully groomed heir, Gavin, will lose his future if this scandal explodes." "I'll agree." Sure enough, the next morning, I received a message from Gordon Grant. Just 3 words. "I agree." At that very moment, Ethan Grant was still completely in the dark. He had pulled every string he could and finally learned from my father that I would be visiting my mother's grave that afternoon. This was his last chance to see me. It was drizzling softly in the cemetery. I laid a bouquet of white chrysanthemums in front of my mother's headstone. "Mom," I said quietly, "I came to see you. Don't worry, your daughter is doing just fine now. No one will hurt me again." I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I already knew who it was. Ethan stood not far behind me, holding an umbrella. He looked like a ghost of his former self, his once proud figure now gaunt and hollow. The rain had washed away every trace of the arrogant man he used to be, leaving behind nothing but exhaustion and red-rimmed eyes. His pants and shoulders were soaked, but he didn't seem to notice. He just stood there, silently watching my back. "Emily," he called out in a hoarse, trembling voice. I ignored him, continuing to wipe my mother's photo with a handkerchief. In the picture, she smiled gently, her eyes warm and kind. Ethan stepped forward and stopped at the spot where he used to place flowers. His voice cracked as he began. "I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have believed Claire's lies. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I thought coming back to life was a gift, a second chance to fix everything. But now I realize the biggest mistake I ever made was losing you." As he spoke, his eyes turned red again. "When you exposed those data traps at the summit," he said, "that's when I should have known. But I couldn't accept it. I didn't want to admit I was wrong. I didn't want to admit that I got a second life and still ended up a complete fool." "After Skynet collapsed," he continued, "I locked myself in my office for 3 days and 3 nights, replaying every moment of our past. And that's when I saw it. Every decision I once thought was mine, every success I claimed, you were always there, behind the scenes, Without you, I was nothing. The rain blurred his face. I couldn't tell if it was rain or tears running down his cheeks, but I could see clearly. He had finally dropped every last shred of pride and illusion. In front of me, he had nothing left but truth. Emily, he pleaded, help me one more time, just once more, for the sake of the 20+ years we shared. If you help me, I'll cut all ties with Claire immediately. I'll give up everything. I just want you back. His knees buckled, and he fell to the ground in front of my mother's grave, splashing mud everywhere. Emily, I beg you, if not for me, then for our son. He wasn't even born yet. And Ethan still had the nerve to bring up our son. The same son who, when I was drowning, urged him to marry Claire faster. I turned around and looked at him coldly. Ethan, I said slowly, do you know what I was thinking about when I was drowning in my last life? It wasn't the 20+ years we spent together. It wasn't love. I was thinking about the path I carved out for you, with blood, sweat, and everything I had. A golden path that, in the end, you and Claire waltzed down like a pair of dogs. I died with my eyes wide open. His body froze completely. He stared at me in disbelief. I smiled. So tell me, how could I possibly help you again? I leaned in slightly. The only thing I'll do is take back what's mine, personally, including everything you thought was yours. And for that, I added with a smirk, I have to thank your father for his cooperation. Ethan looked like he'd been struck by lightning. What did you say? I said, I continued, my voice calm and unhurried, while you were too busy groveling at my feet, your father was signing over all his shares in Story Group, to me. His pupils trembled. I wasn't done. Oh, and Liam Chen from Blaze Ventures? I said. He sold me all the debt he held in your company. So, Mr. Grant, legally speaking, I'm your new boss. All the color drained from his face. His lips trembled, but not a single word came out. The flicker of hope and regret in his eyes slowly crumbled into utter, lifeless despair. I pulled a document from my bag and threw it at his chest. Here's your termination notice. Out of respect for the decent material life you once provided me over those 20 years, I'll give you a severance package. Take it, and get the hell out of the elite circle. Don't ever show up in front of me again. The papers scattered onto the wet ground, soaking in the rain, the ink bleeding until the text blurred away. Ethan raised his head. Rain and tears mixed together, running down his face in a pitiful mess. He looked at me, his lips forming the same broken question over and over. Why? Why did it end like this? Why? Because you never loved me, I said flatly. Because you never recognized my value. You brought this on yourself. I looked at him, completely broken, and felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no sorrow. I opened my umbrella and walked toward the exit of the cemetery. After a few steps, I paused. I didn't look back. My voice was quiet, detached, and final. Oh, and one more thing I forgot to mention. The person you hate most, your brother Gavin Grant, is now my deputy. Story Group will be co-managed by the two of us going forward. You're the one who threw everything away. I didn't wait for a response. I walked on. Behind me, I heard Ethan's anguished scream tear through the air, but the wind carried it away and it never reached me. My life had turned a new page, and Ethan Grant was destined to rot in the past, nothing more than dust beneath my feet.